In today's video, I'm going to be talking about how not to buy a fake Fender. Now, before we even get into this video, let's talk about the definition of what a fake Fender is. When I say a fake Fender, what I mean by this is we're talking about a Fender amplifier that has parts in it that are not originally in that amp. So suppose that some of the electronics inside of it have different year dates on them or things like that. And there's two different types of this example. There's the one where perhaps you're looking at a link on eBay and someone says, oh, I replaced the transformer because it was defective and so I needed to replace it to make the amp work. They're disclosing that something is replaced, so technically that's not a fake Fender. A fake Fender would be if someone says, oh, this is a vintage 1965 Princeton, but in fact it has all kinds of different parts in it from the 70s and all kinds of just weird stuff is going on, and in that case, that would be a fake Fender. So next up, I'm going to be showing you the insides of this Fender, which is all original, and we're going to be talking about what to look for when telling whether or not your Fender is authentic or not. Here we are looking at the front of the amplifier, and everything you see here is original. The grill is original, the faceplate is, and also the silver chassis clips on top of the amp are original as well. All of these parts are very easily available online. And one of the most common fakes that you see is someone making a silver face amp look like a blackface amp. And the reason that they do this is because the value of a blackface amp is considerably higher than that of the silver face. If you look at this chassis clip here, you can see that it has no rust on it at all. A lot of the times when you see them online, they will have some rust. And this can give you an indication of what kind of care the amp was given throughout its life. This two-prong plug here in the back is a dead giveaway that this amp that we have here predates the early 70s. Because in the early 70s and beyond, they wouldn't have put a two-prong plug in the back. Also, the speaker cable has the Fender logo on it, which indicates that it hasn't been replaced. And also, these tubes that you see here are most likely original. Notice here on this chassis that there is no discoloration by the holes, or not really the holes, but the ports where the tubes would go, or also by any of the transformers. Discoloration would have come from heat, from just abuse and overuse. Inside the doghouse, which is that silver metal plate that you see there kind of to the left of the picture, once we open it up here, if you look inside, the caps, which stands for capacitors, are professionally replaced. The orange one on the right is a Sprague atom, and the blue ones that you see are Zycons. Now, because these are replaced, this doesn't necessarily mean this is bad, and in fact, the originals most likely would have failed by now, and if they didn't fail, the amp wouldn't sound as good as it does. Now we're looking at the tube chart here, and as you can see, it has a nice white color on it. The reason for this white coloring is not only because this amp was stored in a closet for much of its life, but also because it had the original leather cover over it for a lot of its life as well. On this tube chart, you will find the latest date of any of the equipment on the amp, because the tube chart is the last thing with a date put onto the amp at the factory. If you see an amp where the tube chart has a date that is earlier than some of the equipment inside, such as transformers, that amp is a fake. Here we're looking at the Reverb Transformer. The 606 means that it is made by a company called Schumacher. The 5 there means that it is made in 1965, and then the 05 following that means that it was made in the 5th week of 1965. Now we're looking at the output transformer. The 606 below it means that it's made by Schumacher, the 5 means that it's made in 1965, and then the 13 following that means it was made in the 13th week of 1965. This next thing here is a small Fender choke, and all the numbers except for that one up top are going to be exactly the same as the output transformer because it was made in 1965 in the 13th week. Now we're looking at a power transformer. Once again, you'll see that the 606 means it's made by Schumacher. This time there is a 4 here, which means it was made in 1964, and then it's followed by a 38th week. Now as you can see, the numbers here are somewhat different than the other equipment or components we've been looking at, but it's earlier than the other components, which means that it is most likely not been replaced. If something is much later, like say, suppose you're looking at an amp and all these components are from 1965, but then one of them is like from 1970 or two of them are from 1970, your amp is probably a fake. Now we're looking at the underside of the chassis, and as you can see, it's incredibly clean. Again, there's no discoloration or grime or anything in there. This amp was hardly used and it's in really, really good condition. These here are the tubes that hang upside down inside of the amplifier, somewhat like bats. These are actually removed during transit because since they hang upside down, they can fall out during shipping and would break. When we first got the amp, we discovered that the reverb effect did not work, and so we took the reverb chamber apart. This is the decal that is on the inside of this reverb chamber, and as you can see, it is original because it has a patent date of 1963, and it also says that it was made by the Hammond Organ Company. The component inside of the amp that creates the reverb effect is called the Reverb Tank, and the reason that ours didn't work is because one of these springs here that you see was disconnected at the end. All we had to do was slip it back in place, and it was good to go. Also, since we're looking at it down here, there's a green cable that you see that kind of curves into like an S shape there at the end. The reverb tank kind of shakes back and forth, and over time, if it's used a lot, that wire at the end can kind of fray and become disconnected. So if your reverb tank isn't working, you might want to check that, because that could be why it's not working. Now we're looking at the original Fender speakers, and that white number that you see there designates what type of speakers it is. The 465 means that these are Oxford speakers. The 5 means that it was made in the 5th year of the decade, which would be 1965, and then the 01 following that means that these speakers were made in the first week of 1965. And clarification, I just wanted to make sure that everyone understands here that when I say a fake Fender amp, what I mean is that even though an amp might have all Fender parts and technically in that sense would be a real Fender amp, all the dates on the parts might not match up, and what's more, the person selling the product might not specify that some of the parts were replaced because they needed to be. If you guys liked this video and found it helpful, you can go ahead and give the video a like. Maybe you can think about subscribing. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next one.